The upheaval we're seeing in the United States, Donald Trump's record on race relations, all of these themes were addressed on the opening night at the Republican National Convention.
It hurt my soul to hear the terrible name that people call Donald. The worst one is racist. I take it as a personal insult that people would think I've had a 37-year friendship with a racist.
Speakers like former NFLer Herschel Walker are defending Trump as a positive force, keeping with the Republicans' promise that the convention would be uplifting. But there were grim warnings, too, about the threat to the future of the U.S. from Joe Biden and Democrats. From Trump's son, Donald Jr., who had a primetime speaking slot, and from a husband and wife team who made headlines for pointing guns at Black Lives Matter marchers outside their home.
What you saw happen to us could just as easily happen to any of you who are watching from quiet neighborhoods around our country.
Joe Biden and the radical left are now coming for our freedom of speech. They want to bully us into submission. If they get their way, it will no longer be the silent majority. It will be the silenced majority. Biden has promised to take that money back out of your pocket and keep it in the swamp. That makes sense, though, considering Joe Biden is basically the Loch Ness Monster of the swamp. For the past half-century, he's been lurking around in there. He sticks his head up every now and then to run for president. Then he disappears and doesn't do much in between.
Donald Trump Jr. there following his father's lead and trying to find a nickname that will stick to Joe Biden. Our senior Washington editor, Lindsay Duncombe, this morning has more from the first night of the convention.
It's clear there's one key strategy for the Republican National Convention. Feature President Donald Trump, then feature a little bit more Donald Trump, and then add Donald Trump again.
4 more years! Now, if you want to really drive him crazy, you say 12 more years. This is the most important election in the history of our country.
Yes, it is.
Don't let them take it away from you. And the only way they can take this election away from us is if this is a rigged election.
In addition to speaking for about an hour after officially being nominated in Charlotte, North Carolina, Donald Trump appeared twice on the evening broadcast, once speaking to frontline workers affected by the COVID-19 crisis, and then again speaking to people who had been freed, American hostages freed under the Trump administration. There was much exaggerated and misleading information about how the Trump administration has handled the coronavirus crisis. Another feature was the number of people of color, particularly African American people, who spoke defending the president and his policies, defending the party against accusations that the president is racist. And one of the most emotional and effective arguments came from former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who said this.
I am the proud daughter of Indian immigrants. They came to America and settled in a small southern town. My father wore a turban. My mother wore a sari. I was a brown girl in a black and white world.
There were also many warnings about what Republicans fear if Joe Biden is elected to be president of the United States. That was articulated at the end of the night with the closing speech from Senator Tim Scott.
While Joe Biden's radical Democrats are trying to permanently transform what it means to be an American, make no mistake, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want a cultural revolution, a fundamentally different America. If we let them, they will turn our country into a socialist utopia.
This was in some ways a slicker presentation than what we saw from the Democrats last week. More podiums, although some of the speeches were live, some of the speeches were taped, fewer living rooms, and something else we can continue to expect as there are 2 more nights, a lot more of one man, the man that Republicans want to see reelected as President of the United States, Donald Trump. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Washington.